All right, so we're diving into the Canada Post strike today.
Yep. Yeah.
You've probably seen the headlines, 55,000 workers striking.
Right.
Almost 2 weeks now, negotiations are stalled.
Yeah, it's getting close to the holidays, too.
Holiday season, yeah, that's like a ticking time bomb.
Exactly.
But here's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Canada Post just announced temporary layoffs
Oh, wow.
for these striking workers.
Hadn't heard that.
Yeah. So nobody saw this coming?
No.
And everyone is kind of like scrambling
Yeah.
to figure out what it means?
So what does it mean?
That's what we're going to try and unpack today.
Okay.
This unexpected twist.
Right.
Explore why it's causing such a stir and consider what it means for the strike for
Okay.
Canada Post. And yeah, for you waiting on those holiday packages.
Okay, well, this strike is about more than just wages and benefits.
Right.
This is how a service as fundamental as mail delivery
Yeah.
is grappling with this rapidly changing world.
Okay, so let's start with the core issues driving this strike.
Yeah.
And then we can layer in these temporary layoffs.
Right.
And see how they fit into the bigger picture.
Context is key.
Right.
So the Canadian Union of Postal Workers,
Yeah.
CUPW,
CUPW.
they've been very clear about their priorities.
Okay.
They're arguing that wages haven't kept pace with the cost of living, putting a strain on their members.
Yeah.
Beyond that, it's about working conditions,
Okay.
workload, job security, and health and safety on the job.
It's physically demanding work.
Yeah,
I can imagine those long hours and heavy lifting
absolutely.
taking a toll.
Especially with the pressure of on-time delivery.
Right.
That's CUPW's point.
Mm-hmm.
This system is pushing workers to their limits.
Sure.
Not sustainable.
So where does Canada Post stand?
On all this,
Yeah.
Canada Post's argument boils down to pressure from the rise of e-commerce.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, how often do you order something online
Constantly.
versus sending a letter?
Yeah. My mailbox is mostly packages these days.
It's true. This shift to online shopping,
Yeah.
huge surge in parcel volume,
Right.
which puts a strain on their resources
Okay.
and their traditional business model.
So their argument is they need
They need to control costs and modernize
to survive.
in this new landscape.
So clash between workers needing fair compensation,
Right.
a safe work environment,
Mm-hmm.
Canada Post trying to adapt
Exactly.
to a changing market.
Precisely. And that brings us to these temporary layoffs.
Okay.
CUPW is calling it a scare tactic,
Oh, wow.
a way to pressure workers
Mm-hmm.
into accepting a deal that doesn't address their concerns.
It does seem pretty aggressive.
Yeah.
Especially since Canada Post had issued a lockout notice earlier,
Right.
but assured everyone they wouldn't lock anyone out.
Yeah.
Now this feels like they're changing the rules.
Well, that lockout notice,
Yeah.
even though not enforced,
Mhm.
it's a powerful tool.
No doubt.
Think of it like a yellow card in soccer. It signals that Canada Post is ready to escalate
Hmm.
and allows them to make changes
Okay.
to employment conditions without going to a full lockout.
So the red card.
That red card situation, exactly.
So they issued that yellow card
Right.
and set the stage for these layoffs.
Exactly. And this is unprecedented.
Really?
Legal experts believe it's likely to be challenged in court,
Wow.
which adds another layer of complexity.
So let's step back for a second.
Okay.
What do you think Canada Post is trying to achieve?
With these layoffs,
Yeah, is it really just about putting pressure on the workers?
it's hard to say for sure
Yeah.
without knowing their internal deliberations,
Right.
but it is a risky gamble.
Okay.
They could be trying to force the union,
Back to the bargaining table.
right, by upping the financial stakes,
Okay.
but there's also the risk of it completely backfiring.
How do you mean?
Imagine you're a postal worker,
Okay.
already struggling,
Right.
and now facing a temporary layoff.
On top of a strike.
Yeah. Exactly how likely are you to compromise?
Yeah.
This could make them even more determined.
To fight for their demands.
Absolutely.
So it could actually strengthen the union's resolve
Yeah,
instead of weakening it.
absolutely. And then there's the impact on public opinion.
Oh, right.
Will people side with Canada Post?
Yeah.
Or see these layoffs as a heartless move?
Especially with the holidays coming up.
Especially as we head into the holidays, it's
Yeah.
a complex equation.
A lot of unknowns.
Yes.
Speaking of the holidays,
Okay.
big question for those listening.
All right.
What happens to all those packages and cards?
Yeah.
We know there are already delays.
Right. Because of the strike.
With these layoffs, could it get worse?
It's not looking good.
Okay.
More delays and disruptions are almost guaranteed.
That's going to impact a lot of people.
A lot of people. Businesses, families.
Yeah. Folks waiting on important documents.
Yeah.
It's starting to feel like a ripple effect.
Impacting not just the workers,
In Canada Post.
but everyone who relies on the Postal Service.
Exactly. And that's something to keep in mind as
Yeah.
we dig deeper.
Right.
This isn't just an isolated labor dispute.
Mm-hmm.
It has far-reaching consequences for all of us.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we've established this strike is a tangled web,
Yeah.
and these temporary layoffs
Right.
just add another layer of complexity.
Absolutely.
But let's not lose sight of what's at the heart of this.
Okay.
The workers' demands.
Right.
You mentioned earlier that wages and working conditions
Mm-hmm.
are key issues.
Yeah.
What does that actually look like on the ground?
Well, let's take wages.
Okay.
CUPW is pushing for significant increases,
Okay.
arguing that the current pay scales aren't enough to keep up with the cost of living.
Yeah, it's getting expensive out there.
It is, and they're especially concerned about the two-tier wage system.
The two-tier wage system.
Yeah, where newer employees are paid less
Oh, wow.
for doing the same work
For doing the same work.
as their more experienced colleagues.
I can see why that would cause some tension.
Yeah, major point of contention.
Yeah, resentment in the workforce.
Absolutely.
What about the specific working conditions?
They are causing friction.
Yeah.
One major issue is the increasing reliance on gig workers
Okay.
and temporary employees.
Right.
CUPW argues that this creates instability
Yeah.
and undermines job security.
Yeah.
They're also raising concerns about the volume of parcels being handled, which puts immense pressure on workers
Yeah, to meet those deadlines.
to meet demanding delivery schedules.
Yeah, I'm starting to understand why CUPW calls these layoffs a scare tactic
Right.
if you're already feeling overworked.
And undervalued.
Yeah, facing a layoff during a strike
Yeah.
would be incredibly stressful.
For sure.
But where does Canada Post stand on these demands?
Well,
Are there any areas where they're willing to budge?
Canada Post has acknowledged the need to address some of these concerns,
Okay.
but they're also emphasizing the need for financial sustainability.
Okay.
They argue that significant wage increases and changes to the workforce structure
Right.
could jeopardize their ability to compete
In this market, yeah.
in this rapidly evolving market.
So essentially they're saying, we hear you,
Right.
but we also have to keep the lights on.
Exactly.
It seems like finding a compromise
Yeah.
that satisfies both sides is going to be tricky.
It's like trying to solve a puzzle
Yeah.
where each piece is connected to another.
It's all connected.
And one piece that's often overlooked
Okay.
is the role of technology and automation.
Oh, interesting.
Canada Post has been investing in new sorting facilities
Okay.
and delivery methods
Right, to try and make things more efficient.
to try and improve efficiency.
Yeah.
But this also raises questions about the future of jobs.
In the Postal Service.
Exactly.
That's a big one.
It is, how do you balance modernization
Right.
with the concerns about job displacement?
The challenge is a double-edged sword.
It is a question facing many industries,
Not just Postal Services.
not just postal services.
So we have workers demanding fair compensation,
Right.
secure jobs,
Mm-hmm.
a corporation trying to adapt,
To a changing market.
right? And this overarching question
Yeah.
of how technology will shape the future of mail delivery.
A lot to unpack.
It's a lot to unpack. How does this standoff affect you directly?
Yeah. Have you experienced delays?
I think it's safe to say
Yeah.
most people are feeling the impact,
In some way.
waiting longer for packages,
Yeah. Dealing with shipping delays.
wondering when things will go back to normal.
Exactly.
This uncertainty is stressful,
Especially
as we head into the holidays.
right.
Many businesses rely on Canada Post
Shipping.
and families sending gifts and cards.
Yeah. Adding a layer of anxiety
Yeah.
to an already busy time of year.
It's a reminder that a service we often take for granted
Yeah.
plays a vital role in our lives.
Absolutely.
And this disruption is highlighting.
How interconnected we are. How even a seemingly isolated labor dispute.
Can have these widespread consequences.
Yeah.
It's definitely food for thought.
It is.
And speaking of food,
Okay.
probably time for us to take a quick break.
Right.
But when we come back,
Okay.
we're going to tackle the political side of this story.
Right.
Canada Post is a crown corporation,
Right.
which means it's ultimately accountable.
To the federal government.
Yeah. So what role are they playing in this dispute?
Right.
And what are the political ramifications?
Of this strike dragging on.
Right. So we're back.
Okay.
And now it's time to unpack
Yes.
the political dimension
Right.
of this Canada Post strike.
Mm-hmm.
As we mentioned, Canada Post is a crown corporation.
It is.
So that puts the federal government
In a rather interesting position.
In a very interesting position.
Yes, it adds a whole other layer
to this whole thing.
of complexity, yeah.
So the government's walking a tightrope here.
Absolutely.
They want to respect the collective bargaining process and avoid interfering in this labor dispute.
Yeah.
But on the other hand,
They are ultimately responsible
for making sure that Canadians
have access to a functioning postal service.
Exactly. That's a tough balancing act,
Tis.
especially with the holiday season here
Right,
and that public pressure mounting.
for sure.
What are the potential consequences for the government then?
If this drags on,
Yeah.
well, there are economic implications to consider.
Okay.
Prolonged disruptions to mail service
Yeah.
could have a ripple effect on businesses,
Right.
especially small businesses
Yeah, they rely on Canada Post for shipping.
that rely heavily on Canada Post for shipping.
Yeah.
This could lead to economic slowdown,
Oh, wow.
lost revenue,
Right.
even job losses
Well, in other sectors.
in other sectors, exactly.
And I imagine the political optics aren't great either.
No, not at
The
all.
government doesn't want to be seen as siding.
With a corporation,
Yeah, with a corporation over workers.
especially with an election potentially looming, there's a lot of public sympathy
For the worker.
for the postal workers.
Yeah.
And the government has to be mindful
Yeah.
of how their actions are perceived
Right. If they're seen as not doing enough,
to support the workers or resolve the strike.
it could really hurt their reputation.
It could damage their reputation
Yeah.
and erode public trust
So what options does the government even have?
at this point.
Yeah, could they step in
Enforce a settlement?
or impose binding arbitration?
That is certainly a possibility,
Okay.
but it's controversial.
Yeah, I can see why.
Imposing a settlement from the top down
Mm-hmm.
could alienate both sides
Right. And make it harder.
to reach a long-term solution.
It sounds like a Band-Aid solution.
Exactly. A more preferable outcome
Would be
would be for the government to encourage both sides
to go back to the bargaining table.
to return to the bargaining table and
Yeah.
work towards a negotiated agreement
That's the ideal situation.
that could offer incentives,
Facilitate dialogue
facilitate dialogue, or even appoint a mediator.
to help bridge the
That
gap.
bridge the gap, exactly.
So it sounds like the government's role.
It's less about dictating a solution and more about creating the right conditions
Yeah, for a resolution.
for a resolution.
So for those listening,
Here's what to watch for
yeah,
in the coming days and weeks.
signs that the government
Is taking more active role
shifts in the tone
in the demands
from either side
from either Canada Post or the union.
and how public opinion is changing
Those are all key indicators.
of where this strike might be headed.
This situation is fluid and evolving,
Yeah.
but it's a powerful reminder that labor disputes,
Rarely exist in a vacuum.
they're interconnected with broader economic, social, and political forces.
And this deep dive has shown us
This Canada Post strike is about
much more
than just delayed packages.
Yeah, it's a microcosm of the challenges.
Facing many industries today.
Workers demanding fair treatment.
Job security
Corporations trying to adapt.
and innovate.
Governments navigating this complex landscape.
Balancing competing interests.
It's a story about the evolving nature of work
The power dynamic.
between labor and management.
And the role of government in a modern society.
It's a story that's still being written. So stay tuned, stay informed
And keep those critical thinking caps on.
as this situation unfolds.
Remember, there are multiple perspectives at play.
And understanding those perspectives.
Is crucial for finding a path forward.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.